Let's roll them. Okay. We're using this story of the Matrix as a springboard for us to delve into some deep concepts in Judaism, okay, that help us to understand our world and what we're supposed to be doing here, okay? And of course, this colorful metaphor and storyline offers a lot of very deep ideas in Judaism. What we discussed last time was a fascinating thing, that there was one part in the story where, has anybody seen it? Did you guys catch up? You never saw it. You're such a good guy. You just stay with us. Nah, that's okay. Your homework is not to see it from now on. You have to be the guy who we can all just throw our stuff at, okay? As Neo is the main character of the story, okay? He was the one who was woken up from this sleep, and of course he comes to realize that every single part of his life was a dream, that he was in captivity. As his whole life he was in a cubicle, basically asleep, hooked up to machines and made to dream and think that he was going through a whole life, right? Meanwhile, he was woken up by a group of people who were the ones who were really awake, who brought him out and explained to him that the Matrix has basically been his entire life's illusion, that he's been involved in living this dream world, okay? And really, there's really a war going on that is between the people and the machines that the people built. That apparently along, in the future, somebody built the AI, the artificial intelligence, that of course raised its intelligence to the point where it made a war with the humans, and then of course, in part of that, the world was destroyed, and there's only a few humans left, and the machines, in order to keep themselves going, they learned how to raise humans, right, and use humans who are asleep as basically their battery or their charge, okay? In other words, basically there are huge farms of people in a sleep having, different cables and, electric wires hooked up to them, and they're all in a complete sleep, and yet the Matrix is using them. As long as they're alive, they're providing some form of energy, and basically what it is, as he raises up, and he says, this battery. Basically, the machines use us as a battery to charge themselves, okay? And of course, as the war is going, they're hoping that somebody, the main man, the man who basically started this artificial intelligence, this Matrix, said he was going to come back and bring the redemption of the world and bring an end to the war, okay? So we're trying to get into, and what we discussed last time was the idea of, yes, Adam. Adam, who was the first man in the Garden of Eden, of course, what he did was he had a account in his head, basically made a decision that it would be best to go ahead and give the forces, the external forces, an upper hand, okay, to give them precedence over the spirit, okay, and then overcome the physical. In other words, let's let the physical win, let's let the body overtake, and then the soul will overtake the body, okay? Before the sin, Adam was a very spiritual being, completely spiritual, all mind, right? And all evil, or for the most part, just look at it real simple, evil, or the serpent in the Garden of Eden, was external. It was out there. It wasn't internal, okay? So it was basically pretty easy to go ahead and conquer something which is external. It's a lot easier than when it's internal. Won't you agree? Okay? A person who was never an alcoholic, actually maybe he tasted even alcohol once and it was terrible tasting, has no problem saying no to alcohol, right? But a person who becomes addicted and then overcome, okay, so he's addicted, it's part of him, it's inside of him. It could be calling him in the middle of the day, in the middle of the night. There could be all of a sudden, some voice inside of his head or some feeling inside of his body which awakens him to go after that alcohol, And so therefore comes the fight, okay? And those who overtake it, of course, there's a lot of overtaking, there's a lot of struggle that goes on to overcome such an addiction, or any addiction for that matter. So Adam, or Eve, they were having this conversation with the serpent, and the serpent was saying, what are you here to do? And we're here to go ahead and partake of the most unbelievable relationship with infinity. And it has to be done, of course, through our free will and exercising our free will, because we have to choose that relationship. It has to be a free choice. It has to be one of where we chose it from our real essence of our being. And then we partake of being in an unbelievably dynamic relationship with God. I mean, that was the real internal dialogue between Eve and the serpent, and how the serpent says you plan to do that. And well, all we have to do is not eat from that tree. And so the serpent says, what kind of big reward is it that you just refrain from eating that tree over there? There's no struggle. There's no obstacle to overcome, right? No pain, no gain, right? If there's pain, then there's gain. What kind of real serious workout is it? Really, what you got to do is you got to really eat from it, let it be, you become addicted, and then you overcome it. And then in that struggle, there's that extra gain, and then there's that extra reward that you'll get. Made sense. So therefore, they went for it. Made sense. Let's become addicted, and then we'll overcome the addiction. Of course, what happens is they gave power to the addiction. They gave power to the external. The external became internal. And then they thought they'd be able to overcome it. And of course, what happens when you let them in? Very hard to get them out, right? Once you let someone in the house, I'm just coming a house guest to stay just for a few days. Something, my plans changed. I'm going to be here for another 4 months, right? It could, right, exactly. Well, yeah, okay. And then let's say, it could be good if they're nice house guests or family members, Baruch Hashem, but sometimes, the stay gets, it's overstay, the welcome, right? So it's always better to try to keep them outside, because once you get them in, it's hard to get them out, okay? That's just in a real simplistic way. And so Adam, really what he did was, we call it the klipa, the external forces. They were outside. What happens is, he invited them in. He partook of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And when he did that, so everything changed. He gave, and the way everything works in the world is measure for measure. Okay? Everything works measure for measure. He gave precedence to the external forces, and therefore the external forces became number one. Okay? Which means, let's look at it in terms of soul versus body. There's the soul, and then there's your body. How do you view your body? Right? Do you view your body as the essence, and your soul just happens to be there? Or no, your essence is really your soul, and your body is just a garment, right? So if you give precedence to the body, like the Greeks do, body is the main thing, make the body beautiful, and the body is the main thing, then maybe you got a soul that you're schlepping around. So then the body becomes number one on top, and then the soul is secondary. So Adam's decision was, let's make the body primary and the soul secondary. When you do that, the universe only says yes. It only acts in kind to that. And therefore, if you wanted to make God, the body primary and the soul secondary, and you just wanted to do it temporarily, doesn't matter. Once you bought into that idea of body primary and soul secondary, so therefore, you get what you want. Body is primary. And therefore, you have to die, because bodies die. Okay? If a body by itself, if it's running on the primary mode, then it's going to die. Then you're going to die. because you went ahead and gave precedence to the body, to the external part of yourself, right? So it's measure for measure. So we'll call the body the klipa. We call the body the husk, the shell. Okay? So that's what happened in the movie. What happened was they made this machine called the Matrix, and it was, supposed to help them. But of course, what happened was it took over. And then, of course, the souls became secondary, and the body became, or the machines became, a primary. Okay? And so there's a war, okay, that happened. Interestingly enough, and it really is a war between Adam and the serpent, okay, or the forces of evil, is the forces of evil really, once the sin happened, the forces of evil are now at a battle over Kedusha, what we call Kedusha, which is holiness, okay? What is going to feed the other side? How is the other side, we'll call it the other side, the klipa, going to get its sustenance? So it only is able to get its sustenance when Adam, or man, falls, when man sins. If man does a sin, or gets and loses track of his essence and who he is, so then that gives power to the external forces to plug in to mankind, to a person, to their soul, and then they're able to suck off their energy very much like a parasite. Okay? So the forces of the external forces, the klipa, they're able to go ahead and suck and nurture when a person falls, when he sins. When he falls, and then sin could be a huge spectrum. We have extreme sins, and then you have just sins such as what's primary, what's secondary. Okay? What is primary in your life, and what is secondary? When you go for, and a lot of us do, get caught up in secondary stuff. Okay? So then you're giving forces to the klipa. Okay? Now let's do a little reading on terms of what the klipa, what the forces of evil are. Okay? So this is basically in the movie how they use us as a battery fits. Okay? How the Matrix or the machines use mankind as a battery to charge themselves is actually quite true. If man gets caught up in secondary stuff, that gives energy to the secondary stuff forces called klipa, and therefore they're able to go ahead and suck off our energy very much like a battery. Okay? But yet we see that the klipot have a good thing to them. Okay? Here, an orange, look at this, what I say under kosher Torah. Okay? An orange will not retain its juice if it does not have such a protective jacket. However, when one eats the orange, one discards the peel. The peel is only there to preserve the fruit. We need the peel. Actually, until Mashiach, until the Messiah comes, we do have to give something to the klipa. You have to give them just a little bit, not too much. Okay? You have to give the dark side a bone. You have to give the dog a bone. Okay? It's a big thing in the deepest mystical teachings about giving the dog a bone. Okay? Because if you want to eat your steak and you have a dog there, I think we talked about this last time. I don't know. I get confused because I give a lot of classes. One of them, if you give him a dog a bone and he goes in the corner, he'll leave you alone. He'll leave you alone. And you can eat your steak. Right?
I was listening to one of your classes, Kabbala 101.
Right. So the peel is only there to preserve the fruit. The same is true of the existence of evil. Hasidism uses this terminology called inner will, which is called pnimiyut haratzon, the inner will, and external will. Here's where we get into some deep stuff in terms of our intentions, of our actions, of what we're doing. When a person goes out to work, he gets involved with all the details of making a living. However, he is engaged only with his external will, okay? His inner desire is to make money in order to do what he really wants, whatever that could be. Hopefully it's a holy purpose, because if it's just to make money to, go on a cruise, okay. So you can, in other words, okay, there's an external will, okay, making a living, right? But then there's, of course, have money, and then, of course, what are you going to do with that money? What do you want to do with the money? So, of course, as we ask the questions, we're going a little bit more internal. So the existence of klipa stems from the outer will of God, whereas kedusha or holiness stems from the inner will of God. In other words, when we eat, simply when we eat, why are you eating? Right? So a person can eat for just because I'm hungry, because it tastes good. Okay? But then you want to have an inner will. The inner will is, I'm eating in order to be strong and healthy, to do good deeds in the world. Now how's that? Huh? Actually, every time that I sit at the table on Shabbat, I say we're eating in holiness, in honor of the Holy Shabbos. I'm eating to be strong and healthy, to worship Hashem. I actually have a song that I sing, okay? In order to help everybody also around focus on why we are eating. Holy eating. Because most people just eat. There was once this great story, okay? The Baal Shem Tov, who's the holy mystic founder of the Hasidic movement around 250 years ago, sits around with his Hasidim, and he did all kinds of mystical tricks and things to show his students, right? And he once was in an inn. An inn in those times was like, a restaurant, and you can also have rooms, right? So it was like, there's like the lounge where everybody's eating, and there's different tables, and Jews are eating here. It's a kosher place, right? Kosher restaurant, right? And he's there with his Hasidim, and he says, I want to show you something. And he wanted to talk about the inner will of eating and why we should be eating in order to elevate the sparks, because there's much more deeper thoughts that go into when you're eating, okay, that you could think about as you're eating. And when you make blessings over food, and then you elevate the holy sparks that are within that food. And that's the holiness, that's the kedusha that we try to connect to when we eat. And then, of course, there's the external eating. This is what he was telling his students. I want you to slowly turn to my left side and look at the man at the table that is behind me. So all his Hasidim go like this, and they look behind his shoulder, and they go, and they freak out. They see a guy with a strimal. Do you know what a strimal is? It's like a fur tire, right? Beckenshire suit, and he's eating, but he's a cow. They saw a cow eating. They looked up and they went, and they freaked out. Okay, a man, what is a man? It was a cow dressed in like a Hasidic garb eating. And they go, Rebbe. And he says, this man, I just wanted to show you. Outwardly, he said, look again. Of course, they looked and it was a man. Okay, it wasn't a cow the whole time. Okay, he wanted to show them something that was really going on. That this person, his intentions when he was eating was only just to feed his body. You could wear all the garb, you could look all the holy, but what are your intentions? Are they holy? Are they internal? Or are they external intentions? I want to eat because I'm hungry. Or I want to eat for the sake of eating. Okay? Some people, they're not even hungry and they eat. Right? Yeah, right? So if a person just eats for the sake of eating, so that's an externalized will. That's klipa. It's called klipa. It's called husks. You're actually feeding the other side. Okay? Kabbala divides everything in this world into either sitra de kedusha, that's the side of holiness, or sitra achara, that's the classic term for the side of impurity. But sitra achara literally translates as the other side. The dark side it is. Okay? So there is the dark side. It's the external side. It's the outward reasons, externalized view of why we do things. Okay? But then there's always the internal, right? Where do we really focus? Why are we really doing this? Okay? So Sitra, there's the side Sitra to Kedusha, that's called the side of holiness. And then there's the Sitra Achara, and that's the other side, the side of the Klippa. There is nothing that is in between. Every thought, speech, action, or creation has its source either in Kedusha or Klippa. Okay?
So that kind of goes against the thought that there's things that are moral, immoral, and amoral. So it's like,
Let's get to it. Okay, I'm not sure what the definitions of those are, because every time I speak to somebody different, they have different definitions of those, but we're going to get to that. Right now, the big thing is the matrix needs humans for juice. Okay, the batteries. Okay, they're sucking off the batteries. What is it that they are sucking off? Okay, of us. Okay, that gives them life force. It is called Kedusha. It is called holiness. Okay? That is their life force. And they can get it only in very small degrees, but if a man sins, they get a big, huge dose of it. Okay? When the Jewish people had a temple in Jerusalem, and they were totally behaving in the ways of holiness and Kedusha, we'll talk about that in a second, okay? So they had the ball. They were the speakers. They were the people who could tell the world, hey, this is not right, that's not right. You need a piece of wisdom? You don't go to Dalai Lama. You go to Jerusalem, okay? You haven't needed some advice, how to do something, solve a problem, right? You don't go to the Himalayan mountains. You go to Jerusalem. You go to the wise men of Jerusalem, okay? Once we lost the temple, right, and then went into exile, the nations took the Kedusha, the Klippa. They had the ball. It's like a basketball game. If you have the ball, you can score. If you don't have the ball, you can't score. Okay? So they got the ball. The other side got the ball. Okay? Hence, we're caught in the matrix. Okay? Because they have the ball. Okay? So while they have the ball, so our job is really try to get the ball back. And what is that ball? It's Kedusha. It's trapped now. It's trapped in the external forces that are around us. It's in the food you eat, the cars you drive, every single thing. That holiness, there is holiness in it for the most part, right? And we have to go ahead and extract the holiness that is within it. Okay? That is the juice that they want and the juice that we need. Okay? It's called Kedusha or holiness. Okay? Kabbala further delineates two distinct types of Klippa. Now we're going to get into two types of Klippa. Really, there's four types. There's four shells, four husks. Okay? So Klippas Noga, that's the kosher husk. Kind of totally. It's not total kosher, but there's kosher in it. Okay? So here it's called Klippas Noga. These are all come actually from the prophecy of Ezekiel. Okay? In the first chapter of Ezekiel, where he talked about his whole prophetic vision and the chariots and everything like that, he mentions the names of these husks. Okay? So this is Klippas Noga, literally Klippa that can be illuminated, or it's a luminous Klippa. Okay? It's a shining kind of shell. And then there's the Shlosh Klipot Hatameot, which are the three totally impure Klipot. Three are evil, right? And there's one which is half-half. Okay? Klippas Noga is half-half. We'll get to it in a second. Klippas Noga can be uplifted and refined, while the only form of reformation or redemption of the three impure Klipot is their destruction. Okay? In other words, if you have these three Klipot and you suck all the juice out of them, they have no more battery power, they're gone. Okay? Klippas Noga, on the other hand, that has good and bad in it, such as internet. It's the perfect prime example, okay, that we face now. You can get unbelievable wisdom in Torah that is incredible. And yet, you can also fall to the absolute worst of the worst through that. And the worst part about it is we're involved in a flood It's a different kind of flood. The Zohar predicted this flood. And he uses it from the verse when Noah was 600 years, that they learned that in the 6,000th millennium, which is what we're into now, and it predicts the round date where the Industrial Revolution began, and of course all of the automated systems and all of the technology which began, that would become a flood, a different kind of flood, not a flood of waters, but a flood of wisdom. But this flood of wisdom, no house is free of it. Okay, even the most, let's say 3% of the ultra-Orthodox in Israel still don't have internet. Okay, but other than that, people cannot live without it. Okay, businesses cannot function without it. Okay. In any case, besides that, aside from that, we see that you can extract good, great, fantastic wisdom from it. I mean, classes, incredible. NETIV classes, right? Unbelievable. But yet there's the ultimate evil. So the Klippas Noga has both in it. Okay, and that evil, by the way, of course, draws into the other three klipot, which are right here. Okay? In the chariot of the prophet Ezekiel, the three unclean klipot are called whirlwind, that's called ruach sa'ara, a storm wind, a great cloud, anan gadol, okay, and then there's the blazing fire, the eish mitlakachat, okay. Blazing is more like a eish mitlak, a consuming fire, okay. And now these are the three klipot which you cannot elevate, you cannot touch this. The activities that are involved with these three klipot are completely forbidden, and it's not so clear. Yes, there's absolute evil that we can definitely think up in our minds where these three klipot are involved in. I'll give you just a little bit of an idea of these three klipot, okay? But let's read it on and then we'll talk about some examples. While Klippas Noga is described as the translucence and the Noga around these, from the three impure klipot flow and derive the souls of all the creatures that are not kosher, as well as the existence of all the forbidden food in the vegetable kingdom, such as orla, that is a tree from the first 3 years, the existence and vitality of all actions, utterances, and thoughts pertaining to this 365 negative commandments, and their offshoots also flows from these klipot. Because we have whatever negative, and now for B'nai Noach, there are laws that you have also. Kedusha you also have, okay? What is Kedusha? Okay? What is holiness? How do you describe it? How do you understand it? What it means simply is separate from. Okay? Rashi brings down in Parshas Kedoshim, whenever there is a line drawn for example, forbidden sexual relations, there is holiness. Whenever there is a line drawn for something that is forbidden, there's holiness. There's holiness there. Okay? So even the 7 Noachide laws also pertain to this. Not eating flesh torn from a living animal. You won't partake of this. There's holiness in it. Not stealing, there's holiness in there. Anytime there's a line drawn, there's a level of Kedusha. There's a level of holiness in it. Okay? So it doesn't have to be the 365 negative commandments, but even so, you have a code 7 neshama, a code 7 soul, okay? So the code 7 soul has this, has its own, let's say, programs that it runs on, okay? So anything outside of that is klipa. Everything in the realm of holiness has its opposite in the realm of the profane. We knew, because God made this one opposite this one. For every, there's always an opposite, right? God made opposites. Yes, there's a polarity. So just as there is in the side of holiness, there's also equal in the side of the defilement. When they destroyed the prophecy, when they destroyed the evil inclination for idolatry that brings down in the Gemara and the Talmud, they had it in their hands. They prayed. They fasted. They finally were delivered. The whole evil inclination for idolatry, they were going to eradicate it from the world and destroyed it. Before that, they had a big debate because they knew if they destroyed that, there was not going to be any prophecy anymore in the world. Because why? the same root energy of idolatry, the lust for idolatry and prophecy in the same root area in the spiritual worlds. It comes from the same place. They made a decision. They say we have to eradicate this desire, this lust for idolatry, and they killed the evil inclination, and they knew that prophecy, holy prophecy, was going to come to an end because of it. Okay? Because God made this one corresponding this one. Everything's got to be matched. There's got to be equal balance. Okay? Similarly, everything in the physical world has its spiritual counterpart from which it derives its existence and vitality. We're going to get to this. The nefesh bahamit of the Jew, the souls of the kosher creatures, the existence and vitality of the entire inanimate and entire vegetable world permissible for consumption, and the existence and vitality of every act, utterance, and thought in mundane matters that contain no forbidden aspect, whether performed for the sake of heaven or not, all stem from klipas noga. Anything in the permitted realm is called klipas noga. Anything in the absolutely forbidden realm is one of these three other forbidden husks or shells. Okay? So you can go through it quickly. What would be a whirlwind? What is a storm wind? Okay? What kind of shell, what kind of husk is that we can experience today? We could put that into confusion. Okay? If a person gets confused, my wife tells me, go to Walgreens, my mom needs a cream. All right, I go to a Walgreens, and I'm looking at an entire wall of cream. I'm like, yeah, okay, I am totally confused here. What kind of cream? And then I ask even a person there. My wife told me to get a cream. I'm like, what kind of cream? So, and here I am bombarded with 1,000 different types of cream. I'm totally confused. Help me. I'm totally lost. Okay? So, in other words, if a person gets caught in confusion, that's the klipa. That's a form of klipa. Okay? And then there's the great cloud. A great cloud is darkness. A great cloud is fear. Fear is the killer. I just saw an amazing midrash, and actually Parshas Bahar. It brings down all of the different powers. You think that rock is very strong, but iron breaks rock. Iron is strong, but fire melts iron. So fire is strong, right? But water quenches fire. So water is strong, but clouds hold water, right? Clouds hold water, so clouds are strong. Wind blows away clouds. They disperse, right? Winds are strong, but man stands up in the face in wind. Man is strong. Fear kills man. Okay? Unbelievable. So much to talk about in terms of that. But tzedakah is the king of them all. Tzedakah saves from death. Because if fear kills man, that means death is strong. But no. Tzedakah saves from death. Okay? So tzedakah is the most strong. Tzedakah, very strong. Charity, very strong. Okay? So here we have the idea of that's the great cloud, fear, and blazing fire. Of course, eish lekachat, or consuming fire. That's obviously people are caught up in a serious addiction. Okay, gambling or whatever it is on the internet. People see things that they shouldn't be seeing, or any other kind of consumption. It could be anything such as small as I know I can fix this device. And then it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm still trying to fix it, right? You're never trying to fix something. I can do this or fix it on computer, and then it's all of a sudden hours and hours go by. That's klipa, baby. Get out, okay? Get out. Get someone else to fix it, okay? You get caught up in things, consumed by things, right? Anyway, so those are light levels, but then of course there's very serious evil, okay? So the idea of the klipa that we're in battle with, okay, over kedusha, over holiness, and that they always want to draw our attention. The physical world draws our attention constantly. Look at me, the orange peel, look at me, right? Look at me, right? I'm all there is, I'm it, I'm the main thing, right? Meanwhile, that's just the peel. You have to learn how to throw it away, right? So that's the war that we're in, okay? The war against the klipa. Now, going back to this other idea in the sheets that I gave you today. This was the main thing when I showed my father-in-law this, the Matrix. And of course, when Neo wakes up and they say, welcome to the real world, okay? So my father-in-law's comment was, that's an age-old problem. And I knew exactly what he was talking about by the age-old problem. The age-old issue is, of course, comes from Plato's parable of the three men in the cave. It's one of the only things that I do remember from my college years. The only thing, right? Even a year after college, I didn't remember a thing except that. Until now, also. So the parable of this three men in the cave is probably the most awakening thing ever, okay? So the parable speaks of three men chained in a cave facing the wall. There's a fire in the cave behind the men. To the men in chains, their caretakers are only seen as shadows because the fire that's behind them, in which they communicate back and forth on any of their dealings. Their whole lives, they are raised assuming the shadows on the wall are reality because they're facing the wall. They're facing the cave wall. You get the picture? Behind them is a fire. There's caretakers giving them food, and all they see, because they're chained to the wall, are shadows on a wall. Okay? This is Uncle Ed, and that's Aunt Betty. Okay? Until one of the men is released to the outside world. What happens? You take off the chains of one of them, and he goes out of the cave, and he sees unbelievable depth, beauty, color. Whoa! All that he thought was real his whole life has now faded to become mere shadows on a wall. He then goes back to the cave to tell his friends about the real world. Due to his experience outside in the light of day, he is no longer able to see the shadows anymore. His friends not only refuse to believe him about an enormous bright world, but consider him crazy because he cannot even see the shadows. What are you talking about? You can't see Uncle Ed anymore? What's the matter with you? Right? You guys, you're facing shadows. They're not real. Such is our prophet. Okay? Moses. He comes down from the mountain, he's going, you guys have no idea what's really going on. Okay? Any prophet. Okay? This allegory is indicative of the relationship of our physical world to the spiritual world. Since we see everything involved originally from a spiritual essence and later became solidified and concealed into our physical world, that makes the spiritual world the essence and the more connected to the roots. This is what we have to get to. There's a big difference in terms of the movie of the Matrix and in terms of how we are understanding our reality, okay? In the movie, there was this machine, they're hooked up to the machine. It has nothing to do with the real world. That's very different to our situation here, okay? Our situation is no. Our existence here is very much rooted into the real world, into the spiritual world, okay? All that we experience in the physical realm, including our own physical, emotional, and mental qualities, are a mere shadowy reflection of something else really going on. In other words, God created the heavens and the earth, the very first verse in the Torah. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, which means the spiritual realm was always created first. And in terms of all of our mystical teachings, it always emanated from originally a thought. And then as the thought came down through different layers, and then it came into being our world here. There's a great connection from the original thought into the end deed down here. Okay? But we see all through the Torah, all these anthropomorphisms that have been used, and God took them out with his great, with his mighty hand and his outstretched arm. He took them out of Egypt. Right? What, God has an arm? What? God's eyes see. What is that? You cannot use, God forbid, any kind of physicality, attribute that to God in any way whatsoever. No body parts. What are we talking about here? How can we understand it? So we always say everything is borrowed terminology. Every single thing in our life, and this is how my father-in-law explained it to me, we think our hand is a real hand. It is not a real hand. We don't know what a hand is. We don't know. There is such a thing as a hand. We don't know what that is. But this is a shadow of it. This is a reflection of it. This is not the real hand. Okay? We don't know what our arm is. We don't know. what anything is. But everything that we're experiencing in this reality is a shadow. It's shadows, okay? There are huge things in the spiritual realm, and we have absolutely no clue what they are, but we have these things to help us. We borrow terminology such as a hand in order to have some kind of reference point for something in the real spiritual realm. Hence, our hand is not a real hand. We don't know what a real hand or an outstretched arm is. Our experience is thus a metaphor of something else greater and spiritual in nature. Okay? So every single thing that you're experiencing is a shadow. Okay? Thus, these allegories are used to express a very profound relationship between God and his creation. So when we speak of God's eyes, we are alerting to his being aware of everything. And God's hand is really an expression of his power or his active participation in or expression in this realm. Okay? So that's what we refer to in the Bible when we refer to God's hand or God's eyes. But really, we're not really in the real world. Okay? So we say here, and that the Baal Shem Tov does say, Hakol ha'olam is achizat einayim. Achizat einayim meaning, literally it means it grabs the eyes. It's an eye grabber. Or sometimes they would call what a magician does in Hebrew, achizat einayim, which means prestidigitation. Okay? Which means it's not really real, but it's confusing you. It grabs your eyes. Just like I think you guys, I've taught you this before. I think you've been taught it too by some other rabbis who've come here. That, you know, the light of the Torah, the light of the holy tzaddikim and all of their wisdom is so great and it's so bright and it's so right here, right now. But yet we don't see it because something's blocking it from us, right? You know, it's blocking it. So the Baal Shem Tov uses the famous parable of a huge mountain. And the mountain is really big. But if you take your finger, or you take the coin, really he says take a coin, and you put it in front of your eyes, even though this coin is so small, it blocks you from seeing this huge mountain, which is way bigger than the coin, right? So he says the same thing is by the light that is all around us right now. It is so here, so right now. God, his essence, everything is so, the infinite light, our connectedness to God is so right here, so right now. But it's blocked, it's concealed, because why? There's something in our eyes, okay? The physicality, okay? That's why the Baal Shem Tov always teaches, you know, don't get fixated on things. Don't gaze at things for too long, okay? You can't, you know, not that you got to let your body swing like this, but, you know, you can't gaze at things too long, okay? Because you have to know, it's just shadows, okay? Shadows. It's just obscure. There's really bigger stuff that's going on. So my father-in-law says that yes, it is an illusion. Okay? But, and this is the big but, okay? It's an illusion that has meaning. Yes, the world is an illusion. And the physicists that come up with ideas, I tried to decipher some things last night, right? But they keep changing it. And what I learned a few years ago about quantum physics, you know, is not what's holding up now, and probably in a year from now it'll also change everything, you know. But the space between the atoms, they say, is huge. Okay, it's like two flies in a cathedral between the particles, the subatomic particles of an atom. So in other words, there's more space than there is physicality. But yet here we are, we're stuck. Okay. We're meant to be. We're meant to be stuck. God put us in here. God did create this world. We helped. Adam helped because he did give the klipa, like we discussed in the last class, its magnanimous, you know, system. He did invite him into the world. Okay, God created the first, you know, klipa, but it wasn't like totally set up. Adam brought it in. Okay, and gave it a home and set them up. And now became this world that we live in. Okay, a shadow. So we say that it is an illusion, but it is an illusion that has meaning. Not like what the Buddhists say. The Buddhists say everything is illusion, right? Everything is illusion. It's all illusion. Even the money in your pocket is really illusion. You put it in my pocket, and it's all illusion. All your money is all illusion. Your bank account is all illusion. So it goes in my bank account. It's all illusion, right? So they just hold no. We hold no. Yes, it's an illusion, but an illusion that has meaning. What meaning? The meaning that God gives it. God gives it meaning because He gives 613 or 7 commandments, and those are the meaning that He gives it. They say that Moses, right? He fixed Hevel. He was a reincarnation of Hevel, Abel. You know, Cain killed Abel. And Abel needed some fixing. He had to come back down. Abel. Okay? Because Abel, his name is Hevel. What is Hevel? Hevel means air or vapor. Okay? Yeah, that's right. She named her son Vapor. Okay? Or air. Not vape. Air. Okay? But because his whole mentality was that it's all, nothing really has meaning. He lived like that. Nothing has meaning. Take my fat sheep. They don't mean anything. His fat sheep, when he offered to God, God accepted. Right? But, right? And then the Shem Shmuel brings this down. That because of his mentality, Cain was able to kill him. Because why? He didn't give meaning to anything. Nothing had meaning. He was air. It was all air. Moses came to fix that. He came to reinstate the idea of, yeah, it's all air, but there has meaning to it. It has the meaning that God gives it. What is the meaning that God gives it? The 613. The 613 superstrings or the 7 superstrings. Okay? In other words, look at it as a man who's being tossed around in an ocean. From here to there, and someone throws him a rope. And so he holds on to that rope. And that rope is his existence. Okay? So yeah, we're all caught in an ocean, right? But it has meaning to it. And that's Moses who fixed him because he says God gives meaning through the commandments. When we fulfill the commandments, God gives meaning to that. Okay? When you find a wallet on the ground, right? So the Buddhist guy's going to say it's all illusion. You can keep the wallet, but the Jewish person says no. There's a mitzvah here of returning a lost object. I have to put a sign up. I have to find its owner. So there's a meaning there. Okay, it's not all illusion, but everything else is fluff. Everything else is air. That's why all the sages, every single second, they're looking about where's there a mitzvah? Where's there a mitzvah? Because when you hook up to a mitzvah, when you hook up to a commandment, when you hook up to some directive from God, then you're hooking up to real existence. Because everything else is not absolute existence. Okay? So that's the rope that we hold on to. Okay? So now we have to get into, now we understand that our matrix is not like the matrix of the movie. Our matrix is very much connected. Shadow, right? It's an illusionary shadow, but it has a meaning to it. There is a connection through the spiritual worlds. Now the connection is through the Torah. As we say, there were 2 pills that what's his name? No, Morpheus. He offered him a blue pill or the red pill. I mean, you could talk a lot. We'll talk more about the blue pill and the red pill. But obviously, what is the blue pill and what is the red pill? The red pill that he took, or was it the blue pill? Thank you. Just testing you, make sure you're awake. The red pill was what Neo took to go down the rabbit hole and see how deep the rabbit hole goes, to discover what's reality. Right? The blue pill, you wake up the next morning and you go back to life, right? And you go and you live life, right? So, of course, the Torah is the red pill, okay? Because it's the idea, the element that's going to wake us up to our absolute existence, to our destiny, to what we have to do, and what we're here for, and it answers all the questions, okay? And there's much more to that red pill, okay? But in a nutshell, obviously, when God gave the Torah at Mount Sinai, there was the key. Now, the idea here is the Torah that was given to the Jewish people We know that the Torah is a blueprint of creation. That means God looked into the Torah and created the world, very much like an architect will look into a blueprint and make a world. Except it's a little bit different, according to Rabbi Akiva Tatz. It's very dynamic. And the dynamic that he explains it is basically very much like a projector, a film, and a movie screen, like in the olden days. I don't know how it works now. But in any case, in those days, there was a projector which just shot basically a blank light, and then the film goes in front of the projector, and then whatever's on the film is going to be projected on the screen. The screen is the world. We're in it, like the shadows on the wall. Okay? It's colorful shadows. Okay? The film is the Torah. The light is the light of God. He shines through the Torah and is creating the world every single moment of our existence. So the idea really is, once we have the Torah, we have the key to understanding where every single thing is rooted, right? Where its spiritual root lies. And there are certain black spots on the film, there are certain, whatever it is every single thing that we experience in this world has its root in the Torah. You'd think, they ask in the Talmud, Haman min haTorah minayin. Where is Haman in the city, in the story of Queen Esther? This evil dude named Haman. Maybe you're familiar with him. Tried to exterminate the Jewish people. They ask in the Talmud, where is he in the Torah? In other words, where's his root? He's got everything, every single thing in existence must have its root in the Torah. Now, it's hidden in many ways. It's not so clear. They did bring the example. The example is where they brought, actually, was when Adam was hiding from God after he'd eaten from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And God comes and he starts a conversation with Adam. He says, why are you hiding, Adam? He says, because I don't have any clothes on and I was embarrassed. So God says, did you eat from the tree that I told you? And in Hebrew, it means Hamin ha'etz hazeh. Hamin is Haman. The same letters, the same word. From this tree, right? There's the root there, which is the idea of concealment, okay? There's a lot that goes into that and talking about that. But the idea was every single thing in our existence has its root in the Torah. Every single thing right now is being projected. Our existence. Except we have an extra advantage, okay? Since the Torah was given to mankind, since the Torah was given to earth, right? So therefore, there's a lot of room there to go ahead and use the Torah to create things with it, because it is a creational device that a person can actually use to manifest things with, if they can use it wisely. I'll give you one example. Happened to be in last week's Parsha, where it's Vayechi Yaakov. I know a story about my friend, I'm probably told this over so many times. His son was very sick, meningitis was going around, they hauled him away in an ambulance with the mother, and my friend saw this Rebbe coming out with his whole entourage of Hasidim. He jumped in front of the Rebbe and he says, my son, they just took him to the hospital. What are we doing? What's going to be? So the Rebbe says, what's your son's name? So happens to be his son's name was Yaakov, Jacob. And the Rebbe says, well, this week's Parsha is Vayechi Yaakov. Vayechi Yaakov. And he said the blessing using the letters of the Torah to give life and a blessing to his son, that his son should live. Vayechi Yaakov means and Jacob lived. Okay? So in other words, he used the Torah, happened to be that week's Parsha, and there's a lot of more dynamics that go into the play with it. How a person can, and who is, the more knowledgeable of Torah we are, the more we can go ahead and use the Torah to go ahead and give blessings to people. Not, God forbid, the opposite. Okay? So here, what have we discussed so far? The klipa, the war. Okay? It is over holiness. Holiness is the energy. When we separate from things, we create holiness. When we distance ourselves from evil things and bad things, bad activities, bad thoughts, bad habits, we create something holy. Okay? Watch out for the fight. Watch out. Because the Mugu chocolate cake is going to call to you from your refrigerator late at night. No more sugar. Right. Right? And then meanwhile, it's in your house going, come on, just one bite. Okay? That's when the war starts. Okay? That's just a light form of it. Okay? So we discovered also the 4 forms of klipa, the 4 names, noga, which is half-half. And a lot of things we partake of that are in the permissible range are noga. But once again, how you approach that permissible activity, food, whatever, can go either way, depending upon your intention. Okay? You can eat like a cow, or you can eat like a person and have holiness, and you're eating this in order to be strong and healthy to do good deeds in the world and elevate the world. Therefore, your intention creates whether this thing is going to go to the klipa or whether it's going to go to holiness. And then there's the other 3 forms of klipa, shells, husks, which are completely outright forbidden, and we cannot touch it, okay? And those are, we call it the ruach sa'ara, the storm wind, the great cloud, and the consuming fire, okay? So next, your homework is like, which klipa do you find yourself getting caught up in the most, right? Right? I like the cloud one. The cloud one's really good. You don't know. Some people... Consuming fire is when you get caught up in things that you shouldn't be getting caught up in. Okay? Like fixing that flashlight that you spend 12 hours fixing that because you think you can do it, when it's like, no, it's time to throw it away. Okay? It took me a while to get over that. Okay? That's my personal thing. I give it, I tell myself, if I don't fix this in 10 minutes, I'm out. Right? And then I'm out. My wife is very proud of me because I tried to fix my dish washing machine. I tried to get into the brain of the washing machine. 2 a.m., one spring pops out from the timer. That was it. I'm looking for the spring. It's 2:30. I'm going to pop that one in. I'm going to fix this. No, that's klipa. Get out of there. Okay? True story. So I called the guy up. He's just up the street. He's like 4 houses down. He fixed these things. Pop, boom, ding. No, just put a new timer in. Dude, what was I doing? Klipa. Okay? That's friendly klipa, okay? Then there's forbidden and damaging klipa, which of course a person has to watch out for. Did I answer your question? Because you mentioned 4 different things. Kosher versus the non-kosher?
Well, no, what I was saying is that when it said that there's only the 2 kinds, you know, it's either klipa or kedusha. And I was like saying, you know, I mean, how would you say? I guess in secular thought, maybe you have like things they say, this is moral, this is immoral, and this is amoral. It's like
what is amoral?
Like neither good nor bad. Which is something like TV.
We call it. We go. It's either a mitzvah, which is a good deed, an avera, a transgression, or it's what's called reshus, it's the gray area, where you can make it into a mitzvah, or it can go the other way. Okay? Or it can go to the dark side, such as playing a computer game for 8 hours. Okay? Okay?
So it still depends on your intention.
I should stare at you, Ron, okay?
Hey, I don't have a computer game, so.
I got caught in those. I'm telling you, 3 in the morning, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's 3 in the morning. And like, I just had to get one more tank, just one more tank, okay? And so, you know, that's... Okay, so there, you obviously, it was gray. Hey, you need to unwind a little bit. Okay.
A
little bit. You got to know your limits. Say 8 hours ain't a little bit. Okay? Yeah.
Okay. This is the question I had when I was listening to your class yesterday.
Can you speak up louder?
Yes. This is the question I had after listening to one of your classes yesterday, and you were talking about collecting sparks. You know, and I was like, does that apply also to the righteous non-Jew also?
Well, like I say here, when you're doing righteous acts, it can't be that you're not collecting sparks. It can't be. Because why? You drew a line. You're not going to get caught up in that.
Because you said that's why.
So on the level of a code 7, I can't see how it's not collecting sparks. I can't see how not.
So then when you take on more mitzvot, then will you be collecting more sparks?
Yes. Just watch out for the other side, because you guys are more prone to Agent Smith. Actually, we are also prone to Agent Smith. He's around every corner, right? Okay?
Darn agents.
Oh, those agents, they're everywhere. And they can become everybody. I want to share with you one last thing, please. Is it still on, or did you shut it off?
Still on. Still good.
Because, so I try to organize it, my notes, and I'm never organized. Okay? I saw it in a Tikkun Zohar. I just almost fell off the chair as I was reading this. And it speaks about, in our oral law, there are 6 basic sections of our oral law. Okay? One is called the laws that have to do with damages. And it speaks about it, you got to learn all of them. You got to collect all 6 orders of the Mishnah. They call it the Mishnah, the oral law. And it speaks about the one who does damages. The one with damages specifically because it can protect you. How does it protect you? So he brings down the most amazing, I tell you, he says if a person needs to have something done to him, heaven says this guy's got to get a punishment. Okay? This guy has to, his car, we got to smash his car. He needs an accident. He needs to get in an accident. Okay? So how does heaven, the offices of heaven, do this? Once this guy, he needs this. Okay? So they get a guy, anybody, who's like basically on the same vibratory wavelength of a low nature, that they could get the forces, I'm telling you, the forces of damagers, which is almost like an entity, an energy, to possess this guy while he's driving on the road to either look at his cell phone or get distracted so he will hit that guy. Okay? We call it Megalgalin Chov Al Yedei Chayev. In other words, we look for a dejected person to hit this dejected person. Okay? This person is dejected, they need a wake-up call. We don't find an innocent, tzaddik, righteous person to do it. They're on a different wavelength. But they find this guy because he has this energy, so the forces almost take him over like an Agent Smith to hit him. And then he comes to his senses and goes, oh, dude, sorry about that. Right? That's how it was working. I'm telling you, I saw it in the Tikkun Zohar, it blew my mind. That's how it works. Okay? So in other words, anybody could be an agent out there at any time. Okay? So you got to keep yourself on the side of holiness, okay? And keep yourself happy and keep your spirits high, right? So that you don't become an Agent Smith, all right? That's just wonderful, Rabbi. Thank you very much. What a blessing. He blessed me. I'm not going to be Agent Smith today, okay?
But can you be an Agent Smith?